I wanted to start this video with all good things come to an end, but starting a video about the Polo with a cliche, that would be a terrible injustice to it, because the Polo is anything but a cliche. It's a car that has woven itself into the very fabric of enthusiast cars in this country. It came at a time where India was obsessed with fuel economy and efficiency, and it showed us what a proper driver's car was. But here we are, 12 years on, it's the end of the road for the Polo. Volkswagen has decided to discontinue the Polo and focus its efforts elsewhere. And that makes me sad, because the Polo has given us so much. It's given enthusiasts the ability to live their passions on a budget. It has reinvigorated motorsport in the country, both on the racetrack and on the rally tracks. It has put smiles on so many of our faces. And that's why I don't think the Polo needs a eulogy. I think the Polo needs a celebration, to celebrate everything that it has given us over the last 12 years. So here we are at the MMRT in Chennai on a hot summer's day to drive the Polo and say our final goodbyes. Before we get to the driving, let's take a walk down memory lane. The Polo, it launched way back in 2010, and since then, a lot has changed, but a lot has stayed the same. The shape, for example, that hasn't changed. It's almost iconic now, but what's under the hood, that has changed many times. When the Polo first launched in 2010, it came with two engines, a Nat Asp 1.2 petrol engine and a diesel engine, again 1.2 liters. And honestly, those engines were the biggest chink in its armor, because even back then, the Polo was a brilliant car to drive. It had a great chassis, but the engines just couldn't keep up. When the 1.6 liter petrol engine came, things improved considerably. That's when the Polo really showed and came to its true potential. But you know what really enthused the enthusiasts? That was the GT TSI. It launched in 2013. And it came with a 1.2 liter TSI engine and a 7-speed DSG transmission. The DSG transmission, it really gave enthusiasts at the budget end of the spectrum a taste of what a proper warm hatch was like. Do you know what was peak Polo in India? That had to be this, the Polo GTI. It had over 180 horsepower. It was so quick off the line. It was a nimble handler, only 2 doors. It really looked the part, but it was expensive, over 25 lakhs when it was launched in 2016, and therefore not too many enthusiasts could get their hands on one of these. The Polo had a number of other iterations as well. There was the Polo Cross, and that was a little bit of a crossover iteration of the Polo. Volkswagen slapped on black cladding, they put roof rails, they jacked up the suspension a little bit to make it a little more off-road friendly, and this made it a lot more versatile. But again, this was not a car that picked up in the Indian market. Come BS6, all of these Polos, they were axed. So what happened to the Polo next? With the TDI engines gone, the GT TSI gone, the GTI gone, we were worried, would the Polo still be fun to drive in its next iteration? And then, for BS6, Volkswagen launched this. This is the Polo with the 1.0 TSI engine. And boy, was it fun! Couple of things you should know. It was less in capacity than the older 1.2 GT TSI. It had less cylinders than the older 1.2 GT TSI. But it made more power, and it was just as fun to drive. Now, if you've never driven a Polo, let me break down to you what exactly makes a Polo so much fun. With this particular car, I'm going to start with the engine. The 1.0 TSI is a beautiful motor. It's a 3-cylinder engine, but it makes so much grunt. And it's the way, the manner in which it delivers that power that makes it so exciting. It feels like it wants to make as much power as it can. In that eagerness, that willingness to go and provide thrills is exactly what makes it so much fun. The manner in which it revs up, the eagerness with which it fires itself to the red line, those are the things that make it so nice to ring out. There isn't a 1 liter engine that you can have more fun with than this engine. I'm certain of that fact. It also sounds really nice. This is a 3-cylinder engine. It's not as creamy smooth as the 4-cylinder, and because of that, it makes a really nice roarty sound. And that sound, most people would call it unrefined, but the enthusiasts, they know better, don't they? They know that's the mark of a fun, sporty engine. But there's so much more going on with this car. The gearbox, for example, now if you remember the 1.2 TSI, it had the DSG gearbox, and that DSG was fabulous. We were worried, once the DSG gets phased out in the Polo, would this torque converter be as much fun? Guess what? It is. The torque converter is really impressive. We thought it would be slushy and slow and unimpressive, but then we got into the Polo, we drove it, and we drove it hard. And the gearbox, it just responds. You slot it in a sport mode and it remains on its toes. It's always giving you the gear that you want. It's downshifting early, keeping you in the power band. In S, it does not give a shit about fuel economy. It just wants to provide you a fun driving experience. We didn't expect this from the torque converter, but once we got our hands on it, once we drove it, we put it against other DSGs from other manufacturers, and still the torque converter from Volkswagen was so impressive. It's unbelievably good. It allows you to launch really hard as well, and I love that about this torque converter. And you know what the best part is? The 1 liter TSI also comes with a manual. So if you're an enthusiast that likes involvement, if you like that third pedal, if you like shifting on your own, the 1 liter TSI, it allows you to do that. The 1.2 never gave you that option, but this one does. And that's why I think this BS6 Polo is probably the best one there is so far. It gives you the best of all worlds. But drivetrain aside, what makes the Polo such a connected car? What makes it such a fun car to drive? That's its chassis, and that's something that has always been impressive right from day one. The Polo, it has an incredible torsional rigidity, which means the engineers can slap on softer dampers which give it great ride comfort on the road, but without compromising handling chops. When you throw it around a corner, you can feel how planted it is, even at the limits of grip. Even when you can feel it just at the limits of understeer, it stays planted. It's not weaving about, it's not bobbing about. That German engineering, the fact that it was engineered to do 200, 250 kilometers an hour on the Autobahn, that shines through in its chassis, even on Indian roads. You can drive it at any speed, and that stability, that honed nature of the chassis will always shine through. Even in the corners, it's so good. You can trail brake in. The front is so darty. It really just goes wherever you ask of it. And then you can get back on the gas and power out that TSI motor pulling you along with great enthusiasm. It's just so much fun. You can drive this car so hard and it will never complain, and it will never do anything funny. It's just so planted, so confidence inspiring, so communicative. You always know what's going on underneath you. The loss of grip is never a surprise. It's so progressive in the way it rolls, in the way it steers. Okay, the steering, when it initially launched, was a bit of a, well, it was a bit disconnected, but over the years, that's something else that they've refined. And now the Polo 2022, it's still one of the benchmarks for driving thrills at this price point. It doesn't get better than this. And to think a 12-year-old car can keep up with modern engineering, that's a mark of a legend. And I guess that's why they're calling this the Polo Legend, aren't they? What a machine. I could do this all day. Whether you're out on the streets, whether you're on the track, it doesn't matter. This is a brilliant car. But the fact that we're on the track means we've got company. This is the Volkswagen Polo race car, and it's an absolute beast. What a machine!
been involved in motorsport from pretty much the Polo's introduction in India. It started with the Polo Cup way back when. That time it had TDI engines. And then that evolved into the Vento Cup, into the Amio Cup. And we've come full circle back to the Polo Cup. But this Polo Cup is very, very different to the original Polo Cup that happened. We'll come to the car in a bit, but first let's just talk about what Volkswagen Motorsport has done. The Polo Cup, the Vento Cup, they are arrive and drive programs which have allowed young talent to come. Not worry about building a car, not worry about service, nothing. They just come and drive. They just have to perform on the racetrack, and that's how they can perform and win. It's no bullshit racing. All the cars are equal, managed extremely professionally by Volkswagen Motorsport, and over the years it has become the gold standard for motorsport events in the country. It's so professionally managed, so well done. And it's got a lot of young talent through. That's the point of motorsport, isn't it? It's to nurture young talent. And over the years, so many young racers have graduated through this very program. It isn't just racers, it's mechanics as well. They've learned the art of building a race car. They've learned the art of managing a race car over the race weekend. That's been learned all on the job. This car, for example, has been completely built in India itself by Indian engineers. Nothing from Germany. And it's quite something. This is not a lightly modified road car. This is a proper race car. Under the hood is a 1.8 GT TSI engine pushing out over 200 horsepower. But the sequential transmission, Vortex ECU, Vortex race dash, bespoke suspension, it's insane. Obviously, roll cage for safety, proper harnesses and bucket seats. In the how many years that the Polo Cup, Vento Cup has happened, there has been a lot of incidents, but there were no major injuries at any time. These cars are really safe and they're really fast. Listen to this, unbelievable. Built right here in India. Just the road racing scene that Volkswagen is involved in, it's also the rally scene. They've done wonders for the rally circuit in India. You go to a rally right now, and half the grid, more than half the grid, are running polos. That just goes to show how involved Volkswagen Motorsport are in the whole thing. Volkswagen is not there as a factory team. They provide factory support. So they provide parts, spares, and obviously know-how to privateer racers in the rally scene. The rally with the Volkswagen Polo, in fact, started with the editors of this very magazine. They took the first Polo, gave them the rally spec, tuned them, and went racing with them, went rallying with them, And the success that they saw made other competitors want to pick it up. So much so that competitors have even picked up the 1.0 TSI, the latest Polo, and are winning rallies with it. Even in the ITC, Volkswagen has factory presence. They race, and they race hard against teams like Motorsport, and it's really, really fun racing to watch. And Motorsport, it's all about performance, it's all about putting smiles on people's faces, it's all about speed. Polo. It delivers all of that, even in its road car. Wow, man. Days don't get better than this. Push it. Days don't get better than this. What a machine. What a machine. Now that the Polo's out, sadly the Polo Cup will be out again, so these cars aren't going to run on the racetracks anymore, but what a machine they've built here. I just hope they figure out some way to keep these cars running. whether it's the ITC, whether it's selling it to people who want to drive these cars on track. Because my God, these cars deserve to be driven. Whoa, man alive.
But the Polo's life hasn't been without challenges. Early on, Volkswagen had trouble with service and after sales, and the Polo suffered because of that. There were a lack of child parts, some of the transmissions gave reliability issues, and well, the Polo, it was never the same value for money proposition that some of its other rivals were, and even are to this day. With the Polo being discontinued in India, Volkswagen doesn't have a hatchback in its lineup anymore. The Polo, it's done so much for the brand and for the car scene in India, be it the motorsport scene, be it the road car scene, or even the tuner scene in the country. As the sun sets on the Volkswagen Polo, we can only look towards the future. And what does that future hold? Will the Mark 6 Polo come to India? Well, it's based on the MQB platform, similar to what the Taygun is based on, but that doesn't mean it will come, and one can only hope.